Cars 2 is one of the most infamous animated sequels of all time, if only because of its reputation as Pixar's worst movie. Ralph Breaks the Internet, on the other hand, is a lot more divisive in nature, with some labeling it as one of Disney's worst sequels, which is saying quite a lot, while others feel it wasn't so bad. Though at the end of the day, neither are exactly considered the pinnacle of what an animated sequel can be, and could have been better by a large margin. But that being said, the question must still be asked, which one is ultimately worse? Is Cars 2 really the horrible sequel most would have you believe? Or is Ralph Breaks the Internet actually inferior to it? And today, I'd like to try and answer this question to the best of my ability. And needless to say, there will be spoilers for both movies ahead. So in case you haven't seen either of them yet and don't want to know what happens, you shouldn't proceed with this video. You have been warned. Okay. So I've already given my personal thoughts on both these movies, and you can find links to both of them in the description. But for this video, I'm going to try and keep my personal opinions out of the conversation and be as objective as possible. So that being said, one problem both these movies definitely suffer from is that they don't do a great job of continuing the story set up by the first movie. Because Cars 2 should have focused more on Lightning McQueen's racing career and frankly pulled the spy plot completely out of nowhere, while Ralph Breaks the Internet probably should have been about the characters from the first movie exploring the other arcade games, rather than immediately trekking into the internet and leaving most of the old characters behind. So in that regard, they both dropped the ball. But in terms of how both movies handled their unadvised premises, and specifically the characters in them, a pretty good case can be made that Ralph Breaks the Internet is actually worse than Cars 2. Because no matter its other faults, Cars 2 manages to succeed on one crucial point that Ralph Breaks the Internet totally fails at, which mainly boils down to how it treats the characters from the first movie. Because Cars 2, at its core, is all about the friendship between Lightning McQueen and Mater, which is something that is set up in the first movie. It's just that the spy plot kind of prevents that from living up to its full potential. But either way, the point is that it at least does build on something that was already established in the first movie, and moreover manages to do it in a way that keeps the characters completely sympathetic. Because the audience is made to understand why the characters do what they do, and their behavior stays consistent with how they were in the first movie. So as a result, not only is the intended story more or less able to work, with both Lightning and Mater making mistakes but still staying sympathetic in spite of that, but are also able to come out the other end with nothing really gained or lost, allowing the third movie to take or leave what was done as much as it wished. But with Ralph Breaks the Internet, it's a totally different story, because not only does it have to manufacture the core theme of the movie, that being Ralph having insecurity and clinging issues, both of which were never once displayed in the first movie, but it also destroys both characters in order to tell that story. Ralph goes from a misunderstood everyman, desperate for the respect he rightfully deserves, to an obsessive idiot who'll do anything to keep Vanellope from leaving him no matter how dangerous it is. And an excellent example of this is when he willingly plants a virus in Slaughter Race despite knowing that there could be horrible consequences in doing so. The Ralph in the first movie would have simply never done that, as not only was he not a huge clinger, but he was also smart enough to know it was a horrible idea no matter how much he could gain from it. He never would have done it. In the first movie, he only game jumps after being relentlessly egged on for no reason, and then plants a virus in Sugar Rush by accident due to events beyond his control. And when he sees the problem he's created, is willing to die to fix his mistakes. And all of that is wiped away to tell a story of him getting over his insecurities that he never even had. And Vanellope gets it just as bad in this department, as she goes from a lonely, miserable girl who hides her depression behind an energetic and bratty facade to a straight-up brat who can't be grateful for what she now does have in life and treats the man who completely turned her life around like a disposable nuisance. And all that's in addition to getting a major IQ downgrade. And for a great contrast, just look at the scene in the first movie where Ralph chases off Vanellope's bullies. Not only does that sum up who these two characters are at their core, but that's what's lacking about them in the sequel. To put it simply, Cars 2 at least gets the characters from the first movie. You can watch the sequel and believe you're seeing the same people from the original Cars. And moreover, none of them do anything that those same characters from the first movie wouldn't have done in any given situation. The characters are totally consistent with what the audience knows about them, and none of their traits are sacrificed for the sake of the story. For example, Mater doesn't suddenly become a gun and violence-loving nut just because he was recruited by spies. He acts horrified at the needless cruelty he sees and only shoots at people by accident, which is exactly what you'd expect from him. And in the same vein, Lightning McQueen still has a competitive edge to him, but he won't let it come between him and the best friend he ever had. And again, based off the lessons that he learned in the first movie, that's exactly the kind of attitude you'd expect him to have. But once again, Ralph Breaks the Internet gets all of that wrong. All of Ralph and Vanellope's characterization is thrown out the window for the sake of telling a story that they never should have been put into. Now, the same can be said for Cars 2, as I noted at the start, but at least that movie didn't destroy its main characters in service of that story, as I just got through saying. Because not only are Ralph and Vanellope virtually unrecognizable from the first movie in terms of their actions and intelligence, but it only serves as a detriment to both them and the story. In other words, nothing that was changed about their characters makes the intended story better. And if anything, only makes it a million times worse because of how obviously they're ignoring what was established about them in the original. So in addition to being two unlikable characters who make bad decisions, they're people the audience knows should be acting better than this, only enhancing the problem. And to best demonstrate that point, just take a look at the scene in each movie where the two main characters have a falling out. Because in Cars 2, again, regardless of anything else, it's easy to see where both characters are coming from. Mater accidentally screwed Lightning McQueen up, costing him the race. And Lightning believes, not without reason, that Mater was simply goofing around and couldn't be bothered to take one of the most important events in his life seriously. And this, combined with his general annoyance at Mater being so eager to spend time with him, causes him to blow up and chew him out. And while it's obvious Lightning is taking it too far, the audience can still understand why he's so angry, because he is to an extent justified in feeling that way. And on the flip side, the viewer also knows it wasn't exactly Mater's fault that he screwed Lightning up, so it's easy to feel bad for him. And then by the next scene, Lightning's had a chance to cool down and realizes he was too hard on him, causing him to spend the rest of the movie feeling really guilty and trying desperately to apologize to him. So not only are the two acting completely in character, but they also remain completely sympathetic because their actions are totally understandable. Now, just compare that to the scene in Ralph Breaks the Internet where Ralph admits he planted the virus in Slaughter Race. Now, right off the bat, it's hard to feel sorry for either of them because the audience already knows none of what led up to that would have happened if either of them hadn't been acting like an uncharacteristically selfish, dim-witted brat. But then only Ralph is called out on his bad behavior. In other words, Vanellope is supposed to be seen as in the right here for saying what she does to Ralph, as well as show that Ralph's fears of losing his friend have only pushed her away. However, that falls pretty flat when one considers that none of this would have happened if Vanellope wasn't acting just as selfish and impulsive as Ralph was. Especially because, by the first movie's logic, what she wants to do is arguably just as bad as what Ralph did. So as a result, rather than being seen as in the right, she comes across as a total hypocrite because she's mad at Ralph for basically acting exactly the way she had. Now it would be one thing if Vanellope came to the realization after this scene that she hadn't been behaving too differently from Ralph and owned up to her role in his actions, but instead she's supposed to be firmly in the right and him in the wrong, making them both come across as unsympathetic. And to top it all off, only Ralph ever realizes he was wrong, arguably making him the better of the two when it should be the other way around. Seriously, say Cars 2 is a bad movie all you want, but that's some very bad writing right there. Now, all of this isn't to say that Cars 2 is secretly a great movie or anything like that. Just that at least when it comes to the characters and their characterization, it is a better written movie than Ralph Breaks the Internet, and arguably more enjoyable as a result. Because again, not only do the old characters stay consistent in their personalities, but the movie at least puts in the effort to keep them sympathetic and actually have them own up to it when they've done something wrong. And this just isn't the case at all with Ralph Breaks the Internet. Because not only are Ralph and Vanellope caricatured into the worst version of themselves, and do things they never would have done in the original, but there's a huge double standard in the way the narrative treats its characters, letting Vanellope completely off the hook even though she did many of the same things that Ralph is held accountable for. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that while Cars 2 may not be the best written movie overall, it's still miles better than what Ralph Breaks the Internet did when it came to its characters. Because if nothing else, at least Cars 2 didn't have to commit total character assassination in order to tell the story it wanted to tell. Okay, I think I've made my point. So now why don't all of you tell me? Do you think that Cars 2 is a better written movie than Ralph Breaks the Internet, at least when it comes to how the old characters are handled? Or do you believe it's no contest that the Wreck-It Ralph sequel is the superior one? Please feel free to let me know in the comments below. And please keep in mind that you don't have to agree with any opinions expressed in this video if you don't want to. You can feel about both these sequels however you wish, and nobody can tell you you're wrong. And thank you all for watching. It is all really appreciated. And I hope to see you all next time.